Most people don't look at the relevant data for crypto. People are asking, will Solana hit $1,000? Does it make sense to buy now? But they're just looking at US dollar charts, they're looking at past history. But really what matters is who's going to buy SOL in the future? And what's the relative valuation of Solana to Bitcoin, to Ethereum, to the entire crypto market as a whole? This here is the wrong approach to look at things. It's Solana in US dollars and it's just a linear chart. But we can't infer anything from this. This chart here shows a 1000% appreciation in the early days, and over here the same horizontal distance is only 10-20%. So as a first step, we have to move this to a logarithmic chart. Then we really get the percentage changes. And that's what we're actually interested in, right? We want to double our money, we want to triple our money, and that was easier in the early days than it is today. And it gives us an idea of relative valuation changes. Now, investing in general is a game of opportunity costs, right? Should we buy Bitcoin or Ethereum or Solana or maybe just US stocks or maybe gold? It's all about where should the dollars be deployed. Because long-term, holding just the US dollar is not a good idea, right? The US dollar inflates over time, the capital base expands. So we have to invest the capital in something. And when we go with crypto, we always have to compare with Bitcoin, right? Because of correlation. Things go up and down at the same time. This here is the Solana chart relative to Bitcoin on a logarithmic scale. So we're moving away from the US dollar chart, we go to a Bitcoin denominated chart. And now the trends tend to be much clearer. There are times where Solana clearly underperforms. There are times where Solana just goes in tandem with Bitcoin. And since the beginning of the year, Solana tends to rather underperform again. Here's a similar chart. This is Solana relative to Ethereum. And again, we've got times where Solana tends to underperform, other times where it tends to outperform. And currently, since the last few months, we tend to see rather a dip again. And so yes, I do agree. It probably makes sense to hold all three assets, right? Bitcoin, Ethereum and Solana. But sometimes we can rebalance in a portfolio. We can have a heavy weight towards one of those asset classes if we think that is cheaper, relatively speaking. Now, is Solana in the historical context very cheap versus Ethereum? Probably not, right? In the past, it went way lower. This is a potential underperformance of almost 80% versus Ethereum, and versus Bitcoin, the risk is maybe a 60% decline or so. Now, why is the decline risk for Ethereum higher? It's because of the massive capital inflows into Ethereum recently. Wall Street is buying up ETH via the ETFs at an accelerating rate. If we annualize the demand in the last 14 days, if we predict that the last 14 days are representative of what's going to happen in the next year, 22% almost of the entire Ethereum supply gets bought up by Wall Street. Just have a look at the balance of ETH held by the ETFs over time. It's currently exploding. And so Solana is holding up relatively well versus all of crypto. So this is Solana dominance, right? It looks at Solana's market cap relative to the entire market cap of all of crypto. And this is stabilizing. This is going sideways. It doesn't look too bad. But the main thing that's currently driving crypto prices, and that's demand by traditional finance, that's not yet well established for Solana. It's established for Ethereum. It's also established for Bitcoin, right? For Bitcoin, we've got the ETF. We've also got all of the Bitcoin treasury companies, right? Like Michael Saylor's MicroStrategy. Those entities tend to just buy and hold. They tend to, in aggregate, just accumulate. And that creates long-term buying pressure. That creates long-term appreciating prices. And that's a huge advantage that Bitcoin and Ethereum has, that Solana does not yet have. And so Solana just moves along with the other altcoins. It cannot keep up with the Ethereum demand or with the Bitcoin demand. And so here's what I think is the next play. We have to follow very closely. Will there be a Solana ETF approval in the US, preferably by BlackRock? Because once we have that, then all the traditional finance money will flow into Solana as well. And then Solana will outperform not necessarily that much Bitcoin and Ethereum, but especially the altcoins on Solana, or the altcoins in general. They will underperform Solana. Solana will outperform the rest. It's all now about inflows from traditional finance. What we've got over here is the Solana market cap relative to the others market cap. So others is the market cap of all the altcoins that are not in the top 10. And yes, Solana long-term outperformed the others. And I do believe it will continue to do so, especially once we get the US ETF. We've already got the ETF in Canada, very similarly to what we saw also with Bitcoin and Ethereum. It first gets established in Canada and afterwards launches in the US. The Canada ETFs don't have much impact, but the US ETFs definitely do have impact. And so I don't think that currently Solana is a great hold over Bitcoin or a great hold over Ethereum. I do think it's a good hold versus the smaller altcoins. I do think it's an even better purchase once we get the approval of the Solana ETF. I do not think that the approval itself will already be priced in on day one. I do think we can wait for the final news, because it did take quite a while as well until the Ethereum ETF picked up. It was almost an entire year until the players in traditional finance bought Ethereum. Now, I don't think it will take that long for Solana. They're probably going to be faster this time, but still, once the ETF gets tradable, once we have all the information around it, it's probably still a few weeks, potentially a few months until we see a real pickup in the demand of that ETF. So I don't think everything will be priced in on day one. Of course, on day one, we will see a price spike in Solana, but it won't be the entire spike. It won't be all of the appreciation that comes afterwards. The Ethereum ETF behaved the same way. It took quite a while until the middle of April of this year until we really saw the inflows, until Ethereum outperformed the rest of crypto. Solana is relatively stable. It doesn't fall too much in dominance, but it definitely falls against Bitcoin and Ethereum, and that might to a degree change once the Solana ETF is a thing. It's just a matter of time. Definitely at that point, Solana will outperform the smaller altcoins. And there is a potential trade to be made here, right? As you know, probably if you're not the first time watching a video on this channel, I like to make relative valuation bets. So I bet on the crappy altcoins with high token inflation to do very, very poorly. And I bet on the solid cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Solana to go up versus those crappy altcoins. This delta is a relatively constant thing that happens across all market cycles, and we can just make money that way, independent of whether or not crypto is currently going up or down. Now, I do have an announcement to make. I always talk about how to bet on relative valuations, right? How some altcoins might outperform or underperform Bitcoin and Ethereum, and how those relative valuations aren't that volatile, right? We tend to see relatively clear trends, and how there's quite a bit of alpha to be made with this, right? We can outperform using those clear trends. The only issue is that for most people, this is a bit too complicated, right? You have to learn the platform, you have to learn risk management, how to adjust stop losses, etc. And so here's now the big announcement. I have launched for a small number of people to just deposit capital into a capital pool and then automatically copy trade whatever I do. The launch happened 24 hours ago for the annual subscribers of premium of this channel. And it's already going well. Of course, there might be some volatility to the downside, but currently we are 1.7% already in profit. Before that launch, I tried this out myself on a personal account. So I started with 40K, moved this to 60K within 2.5 months. And while I don't expect to get the same kinds of returns when moving more capital and when maybe luck isn't that much on our side, I still believe that the strategies we are using will yield long-term risk-adjusted positive returns. So in the early days, I did this all with borrowing and lending platforms with DeFi. Now I moved to perpetual futures, right? Bets on the price. But this relative valuation bet approach, I already do this for almost 4 years. So that's what this chart is showing, right? If I just dollar cost averaged into Bitcoin, I would have gotten this light gray line as return. But instead, I got the black line in return. And here's how I do this. I check for altcoins that have a quickly rising supply, while the demand doesn't grow at the same rate. So this is the example of Balancer. I show this very often here publicly on this channel as well. Of course, there are way more examples that I share in the closed community. But because of that token inflation, relative valuations tend to go up very, very steeply. So this is now Ethereum relative to Balancer. So we go short Balancer, or we borrow the Balancer token, right? We profit when Balancer goes down, and we go long the thing that we believe will outperform. And then we get a chart like this. It's a strategy that works for many altcoins. Just have a look at the overall altcoin unlocks over time. So how much new supply hits the market and how much capital needs to flow into the market just to keep prices stable. This here is weekly unlocks, and it tends to be in the hundreds of millions of dollars every week. Especially this week is extremely aggressive with unlocks. And so this is the return we get, but that happens because this is the actual performance of the altcoin. And this is a chart we see very, very often. Just have a look at your favorite altcoin with high unlocks relative to Bitcoin, relative to Ethereum, and you're likely going to see a chart that goes down quite consistently. Who's getting all the tokens? Who's benefiting from this? It's the founders, it's the contributors, it's the early investors. They are all dumping on retail. So when you're wondering why your altcoin portfolio tends to underperform Bitcoin all the time, it's because of that, right? It's because all those people dump on you regularly. And so that's how we make money as well. We make money when the insiders dump on retail, and most retail investors don't know how to play the game. I made a lot of tutorial videos on the topic: how to bet on relative valuations with perpetual futures, how to do proper risk management with those bets. And then also, and this is the big thing, right? How to provide capital to a capital pool so that every trade that I make automatically gets copied with your funds as well. So that something like this isn't theory, but actually becomes practice for yourself as well. You don't have to necessarily go through all of those tutorial videos and have to do active trading all the time if you don't have the time. If you do want to trade yourself, there is obviously the offer, because I do share my trades in real time as well, right? For example, here, this is the balancer short that I announced on the 19th of July of last year. So that was over here. Since then, balancer outperformed Ethereum by more than 116%. And so if you've got some capital, but also some time, then there's the monthly membership, right? You just sign up, you watch a few tutorial videos, and then you can copy trade whatever I do. And of course, also do additional trades besides that. If you don't have much time though, if you cannot do the active trading yourself and you're busy with maybe managing a business or a very busy job, you've got the capital, you don't have the time, then you can also automatically copy trade me. The automatic copy trading feature is available for the annual subscribers. So if you sign up for the annual premium membership, you get a bit of savings as well, but you also get access to the automatic copy trading, which again, I've just recently started. We don't know yet how this will perform, but in the last 2.5 months on my private account, it did pretty well. And very long term with borrowing and lending platforms, it also did pretty well. I can't guarantee that it will continue to work in the future, right? Prior returns are no indication of future returns, as people say. But in general, I try to get the odds in our favor. Right? When everybody dumps on retail, we can still profit from that if we set ourselves up accordingly. A link to premium should pop up directly here on the screen. Just click on that. It will lead you to the website. If it's the very first time here, feel free to subscribe. I publish this regularly. A like would be very much appreciated as well. It helps the channel grow. See you next time on YouTube, or see you in premium. Cheers.